It's a self-contained travel vehicle, and they're shaped in all different sizes. And this is just one of the sizes. So with that being said, the one that I just bought, because I sold this, is just slightly smaller, older, but in my opinion, somewhat cooler. This is a 1969 Volkswagen Campmobile is what they called it. This came to me from my shop, from a customer who wanted me to sell it for him. I had no idea what it looked like, what condition it was in. I got a phone call from a gentleman and said, hey, you know, I heard that you buy and sell classic Volkswagens. I just moved back up from California, and I had just previously sold my Beetle, and we're downsizing and we needed to sell this bus. And from the phone call, I was like, yeah, come to my house or come to my shop. Love to see it. Now, in my mind's eye, I was thinking like, okay, 69 Volkswagen, early bay, Campmobile, okay, cool. But a lot of these don't come in the condition that this one came in. When he rolled up to my shop, I didn't even see it. I just heard it purring like a kitten. I was like, well, that sounds like a good Volkswagen. Of course, I hear these things come up to my shop all day long. I come outside and I saw it and I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. So allegedly, my client had said that he bought it from the original owner and that it had less than 100,000 miles on it. He bought it in 2012 with about 98,000 miles on it. Well, from this reading, it looks like 102,000 miles on it. If that's the case, I've actually looked at the numbers on the engine and checked, and they do match for the year. But you can go to Volkswagen, get a birth certificate, which I plan on doing, and that might be able to shed some more light onto it. And this thing literally will fire up at first thing in the morning, just bam. I don't even have to put any gas into it when I do it. I've already taken one trip over to the valley in this, I put about 600 miles on it over the pass, and it handled it like a champ. In terms of
mine doesn't idle this much. I've got a big fat cam in mine, but
yeah,
I'm appreciating the.
I need to adjust the idle on it a little bit, the choke a little bit, but it's got, you know, all the emissions on it. So the emissions, it still has California emissions on there, which is nice. It's all stock, bone stock. A lot of these you would see with like alterations and stuff like that, but this is exactly how it was when it came out of the factory. Yeah, exactly. Except for the distributor. Not vacuum advance. I plan on actually doing a vacuum advance on this thing, bringing it back to that. So you're right.
Like, I'm not a stickler for originality, however.
I'm a huge fan of vacuum advance, to be honest with you. Allegedly, now I put a lot of these canvases on here. They say that he said this is the original canvas. If that's the case, and if this has about 100,000 miles on it, that might be accurate.
Especially with the mop.
Yeah, you got the mop up there, all, you know, that's retro. You see the factory handwriting up there, over on the end of the, you see up here on the pop top up there?
Yeah, I'm gonna zoom in on it, right?
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Now I actually looked around this to see if it was all like the original glass. Unfortunately, the front windshield is not original. Now, I've had a lot of Volkswagens that have had the original front windshield, like my 57 here has the original front windshield, which is really cool. I'm not so worried about that. And, you know, I mean, I don't think this was considered a deluxe because it has Cal on here. I'm not sure if Westies had that.
Westies, as far as I know, Westies were not.
But I do know that my tin top was a deluxe, my 68.
Yes, so that would have the chrome. That should have the chrome molding.
Yes, but it doesn't, which I'm going to replace.
But this one should not be.
Correct.
The only chrome on the campers is just the basic component chrome.
Okay. Now everything else is. This is gone. I know it has had a second paint job. I do know that. I've investigated that and it shows. But in terms of like body work, Bondo, I've taken a magnet through this whole thing. Not a single bit of body work has been done to it, which is very impressive. And all of the tags on everything is still legible, easy to read. I know that they probably replaced these seals up here before because these look pretty. And again, this thing was garage kept. I can tell it was garage kept. I know this because I've driven and serviced hundreds, if not over 1,000 of these classic Volkswagens, and you just never know depending on, you know, the environment of which the vehicle is at. But my guess is this was actually replaced. Still has the trays on the side here, which is actually, you usually find a lot of those missing. I have removed the kitchenette in here. It is actually in pristine condition. I have it in a very dry storage. I just put it out because in today's modern camping, it just doesn't make sense to have this right here. And it comes all the way out to here, so you only have that little bit of space to get in and out. I have 2 dogs. That's a pain in the butt. So I just removed it, but I kept it for keepsakes in case down the road I want to sell it. It makes it worth more by having that still there. A lot of times they get gutted out and you never see them again. It's just like the middle seat on the buses. You know, people would rip them out because they were going to camp in them, and they would end up in a garage, or they end up in Goodwill, or they end up getting in the dump because nobody ever really thought that was important. And if you have a split window bus, now you're hoping and wishing that you could bring it back to stock. And yes, there are companies out there that do make them, but it's really hard to track down, and they're very expensive. Now, if you want to look at the interior, it's pretty impressive because it's all original, everything original. Everything electronically works great. I put this mat in, of course. There is actually a wood floor, which the guy before me did. I believe that there was not a wood floor in here before. I believe it was carpet. Because if you look under here, Brendan, look at this.
Yeah, that looks right.
I think this was original.
Yeah, that looks right.
That's awesome. I wish that whole thing was that now, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. Original wood, everything. Cot is even in there, even though it's torn. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with that, but I'm pretty sure the front seats have actually been redone at one point in time, but they are the original door panels and everything. The dash is in really good shape. There's your typical crack spots, but other than that, it's very clean. And even where your foot goes on the clutch is kind of worn down, but underneath there's zero rust. There's zero rust on this bus. Underneath, even this is original, all of this, which is in really good shape. So it's really a time capsule. And so I've owned a lot of bays. I haven't owned very many early bays, but when I saw this, I fell in love with it right away. And I thought to myself, you know what, Dave? You had a lot of fun with the Vanagon, but there's really just something really cool about traveling and camping in a bay window bus, not alone a early bay window bus, you know. And so it's just, again, like an artist, I want to be able to, I have all these ideas. I want to keep everything stock, but I also have ideas of what I'm going to do in terms of like camping with my dogs in a more of an annex for them to be outside and not inside, and then with an awning and stuff like that, and just having it be like just self-containing on the inside. Another thing to note, and I'm sure a lot of people know this who are Volkswagen enthusiasts, that early bay buses, the way they have it configured with the pop top going up, it would go up this way and not this way. With it going this way, they made room for a cot, but they didn't really make room for another bed, like a big 2-person bed up front like you would see in my Vanagon or a later bay. What I like about this though is that you have your luggage on the back, storage back here, and when you're camping, you're not, wherever your vehicle is pointed, whether you're at a campground or even in just wherever you're pointed, you still get to look back at whatever it is that what you're looking at. Essentially, like if I was at a river, lake, etc., I would position the van, and you could do this in a later bay too, it didn't matter where you put it, but I do like the fact that it pops up this way. I've never slept on top. I know a lot of you viewers probably have, and that's great, but I do like the fact because I'm a taller guy, I like it going this way, and I like using this area up here actually as a storage while it's popped up. Instead of being a sleeping quarters, I like there to be storage, and that makes sense to me. I don't mind the spare tire being here, and that's fine. There's all different configurations, but the original stamped bus, no matter what year it was, always had a space right here for it. Post split, because if it was a split, it'd be up front underneath.
Well, but that space, from personal experience, that becomes a stash box.
It does.
You put the cushion
plate over here.
There's a cushion
Put the cushion over there, and stuff, and that would be actually cool because. And I'm thinking about engineering something really like that shapes this so you have a little bit more space right here to go that way. Now, opposed to my Vanagon, you know, Westfalia really stepped it up after a certain amount of time, and they really got really good with their designs. And especially like their storage space and stuff like that. Like I figured out how to put my stuff in here and my stuff up front here and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that's a downside to this that I would say if I was to complain that it doesn't have the same exact like storage space. But I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to just put stuff to put stuff. Like if I'm going to put something somewhere, it's going to be meaningful and it's going to have a purpose, not just like I'm going to throw this over here and then like 10 months, you know, comes around and then I forget about it, or all of a sudden I realize it was there. I'm like, oh, that's where that is. You know? My goal with this bus is to not modernize it to the point where it's obvious. I want it to be very subtle, very subtle, so that what you're looking at is 1969. I don't want it to look modern. I want it to just be old school and cool. With the Vanagon, it's definitely modern. You know, the expectations is to do all the things that you do with those, you know what I mean? Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The Germans really had a way about organizing things in a very efficient and very small space.
Which is where the bus came from. Fundamentally, that's why Ben Pon designed the bus, was
when he went to Germany,
maximize space.
Yeah, when he went to Germany and he saw the utility trucks that were at the factory, and he quickly scribbled, you know, a picture of what he saw in his mind, and they were like, well, that's genius. We had no idea that we could actually make a market out of this, you know.
Because what little trivia, they're not the same wheelbase, but the wheelbase for this and for those is actually pretty similar. They're pretty close. So driving this is dimensionally, you have the turning rate. It's not quite like a Bug, but it's not like a truck. They don't drive like a truck for that reason.
And it doesn't drive like a truck. This thing actually, my truck, I have a truck over there. My truck does not drive as nicely and smooth as this thing does when you go through like bumps and stuff, even off-road. I also like the early bays because of the gearing. The gearing is so much more better when you're going off-road, because opposed to, like, for example, my Vanagon, it's high geared. It's geared to go on the highway. This thing is geared for as much torque as possible because you're dealing with a 50 horsepower engine and you're trying to get it going. And so when you're off-road, I mean, it's like, this is post-reduction gearbox, which was, if you're a Volkswagen enthusiast, you're probably like, well, I want reduction gearboxes. Those are the way to go on the off-road. Aside from the reduction gearboxes, these are actually just as sufficient in my opinion. And I can get it. I mean, I've camped in these things on, like, you know how you go to like a river rock and they're big cobblestones, you know, and you're going over them and stuff like that. Pain in the butt in the Vanagon. You're revving it up, burning your clutch. This, it just crawls over it. So I do appreciate the transmission on this as opposed to that. Some people will agree with me, some people won't agree with me, and that's okay. But from my experience, now, albeit I've got this thing weighted down quite a bit with the cargo carrier, the shower, the lift, the tires, the bumpers, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, the horsepower rating in this thing was a little more better than what I get when I go over the pass in this. I can go over the pass at about 55 miles an hour. I hit third gear every once in a while with this weight. And I'm okay with that because it's geared down with all my gear and all my dogs, the water, all that kind of stuff that's in there. This, on the other hand, doesn't have all that stuff, but I have it geared down with all my gear, cooler, all that dogs, water, all that kind of stuff, you know. Same speed. There's really not much of a difference. You're going to be slow. And I mean, if you like slow, I guess it's a good thing, right? I don't care. Listen, I tell this to all my customers who buy these vehicles from me. I say, listen, if you're going to buy this for some nostalgic purposes, great. But you got to understand one thing. It's not going to go very fast, and you're going to have people passing you all the time. So if you're a person with pride and has pride issues, don't buy it, because these were meant to tour, to experience the world around you while you're driving these things, whether it be a Eurovan, Vanagon, bus, split window, it doesn't matter. These were designed to be able to tour. So essentially, if you're going to buy a bus or a Vanagon, you know, you're not buying it to go fast. You're buying it to smell the roses. You're buying it to experience the world around you. You're buying it to take in the things that you wouldn't otherwise take in if you're going.
If you enjoy driving, it's a driver's vehicle, because you have to drive it full time.
Yes.
That is even in fourth gear. If you're on the freeway, you still have to be looking ahead, because if you lose inertia, it's a pain to get it back. So you have to drive to maintain that inertia.
You do, and that's okay. So
which I actually consider to be part of the fun.
It is a part of the fun, and I think that's why people love them so much. I've been driving them since the early 90s, so in a sense, like it almost feels like I haven't known anything different. However, I've been in the car business for over 25 years. I've owned new cars. I've driven a lot of cars. Not all the cars, but I've driven a lot of new cars. But there's not a single vehicle out there that gives me the joy and the smile than driving a bus, a Beetle, a Type 2 or Type 3 or Type 4. It's the smells. It's almost like I go into a time machine and go back in time to my parents' time, to our grandparents' time. And it's a comfortable feeling for me. And I wish and I hope that the younger generation will be able to also experience that too, because that's a part of history. I grew up, my parents, they had our family rig was the Dodge Caravan, 1983. My parents bought their first one, and
we had an 87 with the wood grain trim on the side.
So we had that too in the 90s. We had an 86 with the wood grain trim, which I drove, but they loved the Caravan. So like up until I was a senior in high school, my mom had bought her last Caravan. I think it was a 99 or something like that, and then she went to some other manufacturer, but that was like the family rig in the 80s, right? And where do you see a Dodge Caravan? Rarely do you see a Dodge Caravan. And they were all over the road back in the day. The Ford Astros, the Chevy, the Chevy Astros. Yeah, I would say the Ford Aerostars.
Yes.
And, the Pontiac and all the, they were all cool, and they're all retro cool, and maybe the generation that's younger than us probably thinks they're really cool, and maybe those will be something. But they didn't manufacture enough to sustain the amount of time that these have lived through. And are they worthy of restoration? I don't know. They could be, but this vehicle right here is over 50 plus years old, almost 60 years old.
But this body style was in production until 10 years ago.
Exactly. I want to put a note on that. I just had this conversation with a friend about this. Volkswagen was a genius. About every 10 to 12 years, they kept relatively the same design in the bus, even in the Beetle. But let's look at the bus right now. So you had your T2s from 1949, produced in the American market to 1979. Some would say 1980 because it kind of rubbed into that a little bit.
And then they went to the Vanagon.
They went to the Vanagon. What I loved about the Germans and how they design things, they said, if it doesn't break, don't fix it. If it makes sense, keep it the way it is. But what we will do is we will change little things here and there throughout the 10 years that will make it, improve it bit by bit. And you can see that with these buses. From the splits to the early bays to the late bays, and then you look at the powertrain, and you look at the motors, and you look at the power and all that kind of stuff. And the, Westfalia is progressing. Then you had the Rivieras that came into the picture because Riviera of Portland, Oregon, of which we live in, they didn't Westfalia didn't allocate them enough Westfalias to sell, so they had to come up with their own design in order to keep up with the demand of campers, with people who wanted to buy campers.